So I'm CG Baldry Adams here talking to Scott Jameson around Level 4 autonomy and one of our products, Sabanto. How are you going, Scott?
Yeah, not too bad, CJ.
So we've had Sabanto sitting inside our portfolio now for a little while. I wanted to first talk about the Level 4 autonomy in industry, what we're doing with that as a company, and I just want to really talk about the journey that we've been on so far around that validation piece. Your extensive ag experience and technology experience within this space is so valuable when it comes to this. No doubt you've seen products come and go. No doubt you've seen products stay, and the reasons being for that sustainability and that iteration of certain technologies. What's your first thoughts on Level 4 autonomy?
I think it's getting understanding that a lot of people are already doing a fair bit of autonomy in their practices already in their farming operations, and whether it's auto steer or controlling, spraying, tillage, anything like that. So they're already sort of got that level of autonomy on their farm already. So then taking it to the next step, which is obviously talking about having driverless tractors such as what we see with Sabanto. It's just that next step, I suppose. They're nearly there. It's just that next step into it. So while a lot of people probably feel a little bit, worried about autonomy, what we've seen so far with the Sabanto is it's very safe. We haven't seen any issues at all with it as far as going off course or anything like that. And so it's about building, I suppose, customers' awareness of what we're trying to achieve with it, and also it's safe, and it's going to meet regulations, some of the programs that we're trying to roll out, especially with farm readiness and making sure that back end stuff is actually right. And again, the safety aspect of it is really important.
Yeah, and I think before we start talking about that safety and farm readiness piece that certainly we've been working on and we know is in some cases a world first, so we're really excited about that. But I guess one of the things that I've absolutely noticed is people's not just the hesitation, but also excitement around, the Level 4 autonomy space.
Yep.
There's a lot of dialogue. People have been asking about when it's arriving. And we've been saying internally in our space, well, it's here. Autonomy is here. It's been here for a very long time. In fact, if we really wanted to talk about the definition of it, exactly. But now that we're seeing driverless opportunities, it's like as if everyone's just kicked it up a notch and really understood that, well, hang on a minute, that's going to change the landscape and become a significant disruptor in the ag tech industry. I tend to agree with them. I think it is going to be disruptive. For really, I believe, beneficial purposes to operations, but also we understand, I think, internally as well that that disruption also can create other white noise inside of business. So, when it comes to the due diligence around, purchasing a Level 4 autonomous product, what does that really mean for that particular grower or that particular operations, or especially with where they are in their cascade of business? So is it the next generation's coming in and adopting that, or is it that there's already a high level of adoption and an attitude towards early adoption within the operations and the culture of that company?
Yeah.
My interest in what your thoughts are is you've seen early adoption take place now for the last 25 years or more in this industry. Where can you see there's similarities, but also the differences being in Level 4?
So, there is definitely levels of autonomy already in the market, so it's not like brand new. And there's been some companies that have made great steps already into that region. But it's like all ag tech. There's early adopters, and so they're the guys that have basically got to have the latest products. And they'll buy it even if it's probably not even ready for the market. But it's the next level of buyers is where a lot of tech companies really fall down. So, I think Sabanto is at the stage in the autonomy. Is they're probably through that already, and they're starting to push into that where the mainstream is starting to look very heavily at it. So. As you said, I've been involved with ag now for a long time and seen a lot of things come and go. And my feeling is that this Sabanto is got a very, very strong foundation of what they're trying to achieve, and yeah, I really feel that, in the coming years, even this year, we'll basically see some great strides in what we can achieve with it. Not just where we see it operating now, but what else we can actually do moving forward with it, not just in the, what it's achieving now.
Yeah. And so I know for us, from an internal engagement, we know that when we first started to engage Sabanto, it was heavily involved in the turf space, right? So for us, we looked at that. We hadn't ultimately had a lot to do with turf in that sense as a business. So for us, it was about getting to know that industry, if you will, honouring the understanding from the outset to start with. And I guess what I've absolutely learned about the turf space is that the level of innovation, even around their breeding of grass and everything else, is ultimately, I would say, in some cases, second to none, because they're so passionate about what that output looks like. And so to hear that this has come to turf first, it's like, oh, this is really sitting really nicely when it comes to that early adoption and appetite for innovation. But also too, from when I was doing a ratification around safety and hazard identification and how hard it would be to operate within a space, within it, whether it be a field, a paddock, or whatever. Turf's great. It's we're not having to run over stubble. We're not having to do various other things around the sensors, which allows us to really get an early understanding with a lower risk around what an autonomous driverless solution looks like without the level of safety counteractive measures that you would then have to think about with a bigger tractor, with a bigger style of censorship and things like that. So what I want to talk about now is turf, and I want to talk about how we've seen that just for us grow in the last 6 months with our partners in turf, being Lawn Solutions Australia, but also with our I guess we can call them buddies now at Turf Co. Australia. We've become so close in rubbing up and understanding what their needs have been and what their pains have been even prior to having a level 4 autonomous solution on their operations. And from first-hand experience, I can't see how we can get a better insight.
No.
So it's for me, I think, okay, well, we're starting here, but I want to talk about that journey with us. Like what's been your take on it so far?
Realistically, we couldn't partner with a better company.
Oh, wow.
And the access they have given us and the trust they have given us, moving forward, I think held us in very good stead to get a very quick understanding of their operation. You're right, we really, from broadacre farming background, I suppose, we haven't had very much access to turf growers before, and this is a fantastic opportunity. And whilst, at this stage, the Sabanto is just running mowing, there, in the turf industry, there's a whole lot of other operations that I can see we can actually start moving into as well. It's proven itself in mowing. It's doing a very good job. So what else can we do that's, without losing sight of making sure the first step is 100%, moving on to what else we can see we can get into it. But as you mentioned, Turfco have been fantastic, and Marcus and the staff down there have been excellent to work with.
Yeah. I know some of the things, especially with the conversations I've been having with Marcus and even Lawn Solutions Australia, is that they've had such an experience of understanding that they need something. They knew that level 4 autonomy was a necessity for this to move into the next sort of phase of growing turf in Australia. Because they had labour, shortages or concerns around getting the best possible type of output with their grass, by slowing down the operations, which a lot of labour doesn't want to do. They don't want to sit on a tractor with a mower incredibly slow and literally watch the grass grow around them. That's not what they want to do. But what Marcus was so good in explaining is that that's the best thing for the turf. So not only are we getting a better quality of a product because of that opportunity to have that solution, but he's able to now deploy that same person that was sitting on that tractor into another part of his business.
Yeah.
And the amount of time that he's otherwise saved in not only demonstrating what that task is required, because they can just simply deploy that Sabanto to that paddock and it just gets done. And then the other piece there was that it allows oh, hey, Mick, come on in.
Oh, howdy.
Yeah. So I've got Mick Casey joining us. Come on. Just talking about
Try not to knock down all the cameras on entry.
yeah, so just talking about, you know, what he was able to do with that particular worker, who was really dedicated to that type of task. What we've been able to understand is that guy's gone, I actually really enjoy these other parts of the business because I'm now not tied up doing that. And there's now been an escalation of his skill set and a deployment that now is servicing so many other parts of the business because we're now no longer having to sit for hours on end. I mean, we saw Mo, who we affectionately call Mo, the mole that's going around. We saw it go around on Christmas Day, on Boxing Day, on Australia Day. And then I think you actually made a Melbourne Cup. It was the race that stopped the nation, but not Mo.
Not this dark horse.
Yeah, not this dark horse. That's right. Yeah. So it does deliver a level of value that I think we've been able to see firsthand.
Absolutely.
And it's been able to ultimately give us a real value and understand the pain of what the turf industry goes through and why Sabanto is such a good solution. I mean, but now we're probably going to talk a little bit more about that farm readiness piece and how turf's been a fantastic opportunity for us to get that, knowing we don't have to deal with stubble, knowing that there's a lot of clearance inside of those fields that we don't have to contend with. So we're able to work out that piece first. My question, Mick, to you, and it's just to bring you in really quickly on this, is that we've had a fantastic relationship with Turfco and Lawn Solutions Australia by extent. Where do you see our Sabanto product moving throughout Australia in this? What do you expect to see?
I think we've been really fortunate to have the partners we've had from the very beginning.
Yeah, we said that.
I'm coming into this conversation halfway through, but we have been blessed. Not only have the conditions been amazing in terms of turf, like you said, where we've got minimal obstruction, we've always got a flat profile. We do have some complications with power lines and irrigation systems and those sorts of things. That's given us an opportunity to understand how to map those and validate again in the field. But we've also had a customer who's understood that they can now incorporate this technology into their farm and adapt their processes and systems to suit. It's a give and a take. Like, how can the technology come into the farm and adapt? And then what processes can we change, or what shortcuts and efficiencies can we improve by bringing a technology in that maybe works a little bit differently than what we're used to. So we've seen them change their mower widths, and there's different opportunities there with different machines, with a cab, without a cab. What is the application we're going into? Which probably lends itself to your question, what are we going into in ag outside of turf? And that's really going to be the exciting part, because really it's limitless, and I've been amazed at how quickly or how consistently I've seen this system operate in terms of going into turf. I thought we were busy in broadacre ag. I thought we didn't stop. Those guys do not stop. Mm-hmm. It's 100%. Just once it's finished, it's going again, and it's rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat,
the hover bridge,
repeat.
Yeah.
Which is great for the tech, and you know, once it's completed at once and it goes through again, brilliant. That's what we're there to achieve. So in ag, in a broadacre sense, the areas that we're wanting to cover, in the time frames we need to cover it in, that window of time isn't always there. And so if we're consistently just nibbling away, it really gives us a different approach to covering those hectares in the time frame we need to. So spraying, spreading, I think the complications aren't going to be in, there will be some in the incorporations and the integrations of the technologies, It'll be in the loading systems and the logistics around getting water to the field. And I think there's more ways we can bring autonomy in into the farm activity that's not necessarily the activity itself. It's delivering the parts to the back paddock or the other end of the farm. It's delivering fuel trailers, water carts, grouper bins, whatever it is. If you're on the air seeder and you want that grouper back around on the other side of the block, great. You can bring that tractor around, bring the seed or the fert that you're going to reload into the top corner of the next block before you've moved into the next block. You don't need that second set of hands to bring the crews around, to bring you, to grab the other truck and scoot down the road.
Towing a vehicle behind a tractor or whatever, be able to drive it back.
Hell, you could bring yourself out a Land Cruiser on a flat top trailer behind a Sabanto system on a tractor. I mean,
deliver your lunch.
Deliver your lunch.
It's endless.
Yeah, and I think when Scott and I were talking earlier, and I know that we've talked about this for probably the last 6 months specifically, especially with the Sabanto product, I think we all agreed when we saw it going around on turf, we went, well, if it can do it here, where else can it do it? It doesn't necessarily have to be in the industry. But I guess over the last 6 months, we've seen that build, that library of what it could probably possibly do, library build, as we've seen it continue to perform. That's the ideas, And it's like, okay, so if we're going to do this and we're going to do this, well, that could actually also do that. And it's amazing to think that I'd hate to know where we are in 12 months' time, knowing what the hell would it be doing and what would it actually be proven to do, which I think is the exciting part.
And I think the interesting thing is, sorry, Scott, is what people are going to ask it to do. And the things that we haven't thought of, because, sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, and cockies are great at coming up with innovative solutions, and they'll want to understand if it can achieve it or not.
Without losing sight, obviously it's great. We can obviously look at all these different things it's going to be able to achieve, but we don't want to lose sight also of the fact that we've got to validate that this is correct. We don't want to go into the market just because one guy wants it to do this. We don't want to spend all the time getting it ready for that, but then forget about the rest of what we're trying to achieve. So
the core of that.
I think that's the investment in the machinery and the demo kit. And usually you look at this sort of equipment as being, this will be great for a field day, and we'll showcase it at an exhibition. But for us, understanding the tech and the idiosyncrasies are going to be really important, that validation and understanding.
Absolutely.
Because right now, if you call our business and you get different techs, you'll have a different technical database in each technician's mind on when they joined the business. Do they understand the legacy products? Do they understand the new products? Some of our younger techs really get the new products, but would probably have to think twice or look it up or ask a question in the team on some of the legacy stuff. So it's going to be interesting in time as we move into the newer tech, who's dragging through the legacy ideas and information and even issues that we've seen over the years with different products and different builds. How is that going to lend itself to those technicians being able to troubleshoot newer technologies, how to understand the newer interfaces, and sometimes those UIs are the same but different terminology. We brought it up yesterday with our outrun validation in the field, and like a staging is a common term. Staging a machine is a common term in an autonomous user interface, where it's kind of like a snap to or a shift to. Can we call it shift? Or are people going to think that's a term I've always said, don't shift your lines, because you'll end up with too many ABs in a field and you'll end up with too much data. And so it's asking it to do the same thing or different things, but sometimes it'll be a different language.
It's interpreting the difference between the US terminologies and all that stuff too, and we've seen that already. It's just that change in what they deem, like as in the grain cart versus a chaser bin. It's sort of So
it's actually funny we're talking about terminology though, because it was something that was brought up, and I don't believe that we would have come across this unless we'd had such a great relationship with Turfco and the likes. Is that we were sitting around, I think it was down in Turfco, talking about how we can identify for their external customers who are outside of ag or outside of industry, that we can notify them from a hazard point of view that there's an autonomous solution on farm.
Yeah.
And it was very quickly noted that not a lot of people understand what autonomous means.
No.
So they actually had to change the terminology driverless tractor, and that landed so much easier. And people were able to go, oh. And
The
those
first person that turned up in the morning said, "Oh, great! I saw the sign on the fence. What's an autonomous tractor?" And I think there was you heard everybody slap their forehead at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You skip past those things, and I did see a notification the other day for an autonomous tractor, and I thought we'll have to fix that
in front of So Turfco heard that, and they've now got driverless tractor as their signage. So these are all the things that we know are just little baby steps, but actually probably make the biggest impact in some cases.
There was a sticker that everybody used to have on their toolbox. There was a legacy brand of auto steering system, and it was a bit of a background cartoon image of a tractor with a guy, and his hands are up here.
Yeah.
He's got a cowboy hat on, he's a farmer, and he's not steering his tractor. I'm thinking about how do we do the same thing, a similar thing, and it's just going to be a tractor.
Yeah.
It's a picture of a tractor.
Yeah. The end.
It's the end. It's like, do we draw a hole there? It's like there's no...
Yeah. No, it's I know that we were talking earlier about, and I certainly know we've been speaking with the US about this, about the responsibility of bringing a level 4 autonomous solution into our market responsibly, that validation piece that you were just talking about. And I know that we specifically have taken that really seriously. And I just want to talk a little bit now about the farm readiness program that we're developing alongside our level 4 portfolio, especially with what we've delivered and engaged with our turf friends. So I guess, where did it start, Mick? Because I think it really started with, how are we going to deliver this responsibly? So we know for the first instance, it's not going to create any more white noise for the business, for both our business and for the growers' business, by introducing such a clever option of thought.
Well, I think there were two main factors that drove us to really dive deep. The first one was probably our conversations around our family succession and where we were going, and some of the risks that I realised we were going to need to take in business in the future that I didn't believe we were properly prepared for. And so we really needed to align ourselves with more structure and process and governance and understand those things. And they're not the pieces that you talk about publicly, but everybody has the same risks, and you talk about it, what is your risk appetite? Because, the guy on the dirt bike doing back flips is...
I don't align with that risk appetite, by the way.
Me neither. And
stay in your lane.
Yeah. Look. Even as I got more into my job and my role in work and families, I got rid of bikes and things like that. You do change over time, and I guess that's just another way of thinking about it, is you do the same things in business. You position yourself, and I guess the more you build and the more legacy you start to see that you're growing is that risk needs to be mitigated and managed. It's not to say that we can't take risks, because we take them every day when we step out of our front door and go to work, or even drive down the street. We know that we can't live in a bubble, but there are ways to manage it and mitigate it and still maintain productivity, because that's our main goal, is create higher levels of efficiency and productivity, not to stifle either our business or our growers. So I think mitigating that risk for our business and our longer term strategy was a big driver. But the other thing that also comes to mind is that we've been approached by growers for years. When's your autonomy solution coming? Being aligned with Trimble, a name synonymous with that control technology, we were perceived as being somebody that we're a brand that was going to bring that to market, and it took a long time. But when it clicks and you realise that it's coming, it's not just coming, but it's here now. You sit back and you go, wow, how are we going to handle this? without leaving our growers behind,
Yeah.
and ignoring, not ignoring, but not having the capacity to serve the systems that are out there and continue to service them, whilst knowing that we're about to embark on something that's going to explode.
Yeah.
Because we're going to do it well.
Yeah.
And we're not going to release it properly until we know we can do it well.
Yeah.
But when it goes, it's going to go, and we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So the wind up is really, really important, because it's the preparation that we need to undertake. So we've positioned our business, we've managed our risk, we've understood what risks we're willing to take going into this.
Yeah.
Because then we can help communicate that to our growers and help them understand what risks they are exposing their business to, and also what risks they're mitigating by taking people away and off their machines, out of the chemical zone. All of those things that we can consider from the workplace health and safety point of view.
I think one of the big things with autonomous is if there is an incident, so somebody does get hurt or something does happen, it tarnishes the whole autonomy industry, basically. Whereas if somebody stuffed up driving a tractor and ran over something or stuff, it's blamed on the person operating it. So it's just localized to that one person. So that's why this safety part of it, its validation is so critical. Get it right.
It is, you're right. And it was only this week we were talking about it with some of the guys. It's, I'll bring a brand into this, and it's Tesla. And they say, oh, 2 people died in a Tesla. And it's like, how many people died in the same time frame?
Exactly.
In cars that weren't automated.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not about making excuses for anybody or trying to protect brands that maybe haven't done the right job and protected their customers with their due diligence. It's about understanding what are our risks.
Yeah.
What are we willing to take on board? What are we willing to share as a risk with our growers who also want to deliver technologies to gain those efficiencies? And how are we going to approach things with a full understanding and encompassing what we're going into?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you both chime in on this, because I think it's been such an interesting conversation for us, especially over the last, 6 to 8 months. And that is what legacy piece, and you touched on it just now, we all have a different goal in that legacy understanding. I mean, I know we talked about that succession planning, and I know that we talked about what sort of footprint we want to leave inside the industry after being and working inside it for such a long time, especially you both. I know from my point of view, and especially I come at this from a different angle, not having a significant agricultural background like you both do. It was about understanding from a really broad landscape from Australian growers that they are ultimately our people that are going to produce food and fibre for us as a population and as a world, and as a global opportunity as well. I mean, the amount of export that we offer and the economy that's attached to that. But then also if you draw that down to that level of security that autonomy could obviously offer, you don't want to break the backbone of that for the sake of. And it's like, well, if you're doing it for the sake of, well, then really what does that say about what we're trying to achieve? Is it that we're just doing it to commercialize this as much as possible and then get out? No, none of us on the table when we were having this conversation had any of that. Even in our dialogue, it was more around like, we need to firstly socialize and get this right within our own systems and our own understanding of this as a company, and then engage that with our farm readiness with our own people, so our internal customers being our staff. Why? Because these guys are ultimately going to be not only selling it, but they're also going to be supporting it, and they're going to be having to translate it. And that's often what we talk about. We translate things. And where I sat, especially from a governance point of view and a systems and policies and legislation point of view, I thought, and we've both talked about this, and this is probably the first time we're talking about it outwardly, is that we wanted to be responsible with that. We want to be accountable to what we sold. And that accountability then was attached to, well, if that grower is also going to meet our same level of appetite on that same level of accountability and that same appetite to get this right, knowing that there's legacy pieces attached to this in one sense, but also legacy pieces that were bigger than us. It's an industry that we're talking about. This is generations of farming communities throughout our region, but also throughout Australia. So we knew that if we were taking something into market, it was a big responsibility. And I don't think we've ever actually ultimately named it like that, but we talk about it nearly constantly every day, because we turn up, we hear those phones ringing, and we pick them up, and we make that problem go away, or we answer that question that needed to be answered. That doesn't stop. That core piece inside the business doesn't stop just because it's level 4. What does change though is the journey management of our internal customers being our staff, and then the external customers being our people that we're on farm with. And it's about, and you said it very, very, very neatly just now, and Scott, you've talked about a number of times, we don't want to leave anyone behind. That's not the purpose of this. This is not about pushing something into the market and then saying, "Well, see you guys, look at us, we're all heroes and we can get this done." It's like, hang on a minute. Everyone's got to have a level of understanding of this. Why? Because it is going to be in our future. So if we don't get it in this generation of farming, we have to get it in the next generation of farming. And I know with what we've certainly delivered in the relationship with Lawn Solutions Australia, we've sponsored their Next Generation Farming Award, because we know that these are the guys that we're going to be supporting over into the next coming years. And we want to showcase that support by saying, come out to where we operate. Let's show you what some other autonomous solutions do indeed offer. Sabanto is one of those things, but see how it's actually growing within industry. You're not alone. So when you're making these decisions to invest and to think about that capital expenditure being one of those advantages about having an autonomous solution on farm, you know that you're actually a part of a bigger industry of how they're having to think about the same thing. Different pain points and different things get addressed, but at the same time, it's still the same essence. It's about sustainability, that legacy piece, and being able to deliver on that. And I think our farm readiness does encompass that, especially in the early stages of where we're having to proof it and validate it.
Definitely. And I think we need to not underestimate that the next gen coming through are also going to bring with them new ideas and possibly higher expectations of what the output technology should be able to achieve for them.
I totally agree with that.
And I mean, we've seen a lot of money pumped into agriculture over the last 10 years or so. There's been a lot of noise, there's been a lot of disruption, and there's also been a lot of disappointment. And so my messaging and my conversations with the partners and the manufacturers we're working with are, don't just innovate for the sake of innovation. I keep repeating it, but it's
true. You say it a lot.
We really need real value and real products that work. We'll deliver them, but they have to work, and they have to be robust. They have to be reliable. And I think it does still go back to, like, we don't want to sell something that gives us problems.
Exactly.
It's not about revenue for us, even though we, as a normal commercial business like everybody else, have to survive. It's not about selling as much to as many people as we can, because frankly, I don't want the problems.
No.
I don't want people calling with problems. There's already enough problems when things just go wrong in the natural course of doing business in agriculture. Like the saying goes, it doesn't matter what color it is, it's going to break down. You're going to need service or support at some point in time. Find a partner who you can work with. There's always going to be brand allegiance out there. But I think if we look closely at the automotive industry, there's a lot of disruption happening there, and the same thing could happen in agriculture.
Well, the amount of tech that's just come on board in ag in the last 5 years has just been astonishing. You see a lot of it fall over though. You might see it mentioned on LinkedIn or somewhere, but then you never see it again. So it's about making sure that what we're involved in, you know, again, the validation side of it, we know that it's actually going to do for the farmers what they want it to do. And not just be,
it has to,
must have, or, just nice to have things. So
think about auto steer and what we delivered with the early auto pilots. We haven't seen that level of uptake again since. Now, you could argue that we've seen it with optical sprayers, but if you looked at it, it's not the same as auto steer. And I think that we are on the cusp of the next piece. It's that next solution that's going to deliver so much value that you just can't live without it.
Well, I just want to touch on that because, I mean, I'm sitting here with you guys who have got, like I said, decades of experience in this space. What do you think level 4 autonomy is going to do for us over these next five years, if you can just look at that with what we're wanting to achieve? It's a big open-ended question. I'm expecting really smart answers.
CJ.
Yeah.
I don't think the business structure, the way it looks today, will be the same even in that time frame. We'll be responding to things differently. We'll be given different support tools and mechanisms, and connectivity's improved so much over the last few years. What's it going to look like again in the next few as it comes to handsets? And you know, I'm late to this conversation because I've been logged into somebody's sprayer that I've had them edge up to the house as close as they can to get the best reception on their satellite Wi-Fi, to be able to give the best support I can. I mean, what does that landscape and look like in 5 years, and how has that affected our delivery of the technology and our ability to service and remotely monitor and support machines that there isn't a guy in the cab to be able to connect us to a Wi-Fi hotspot or to help us gain access. So that reliability and that uptime is going to improve externally. But I think the people in our business will change and grow. The customer expectation, as I mentioned earlier, will be different. And so our response will be different. Whether that's something we do or aim to do over time purposefully, or whether that's just an organic transformation that takes place over time, I think it'll be a bit of a combination of both. Our systems will always be engineered to adapt. And it's the same as anybody else. If you're not keeping up with technology, you get left behind. It will happen for farmers and it will happen for businesses. If there's no willingness to adopt.
I think you'd see a definite shift in the reason why people look at autonomy, you know, as you hear a lot of noise about labour and stuff like that as being their biggest concern. But as you said there before, that the reasons for getting into it are changing. And so it's about safety. It's about being more efficient. You know, it's funny, we've heard some stuff this week about some of the, you know, say a chaser bin driver and going, oh, it looks like my job's gone. But no, it's about reassigning that guy to a more intense task that, you know, autonomy can't do.
Exactly.
And just making sure that we bring everybody along from the ride. It's not about replacing people.
It's not about replacing people. But think about spraying and taking someone out of that operation. I mean, spraying's a necessary evil. It has to be done. Would we do it if we had another choice? No, we wouldn't choose to spray. That probably upsets a few corporations around the world, but they'll have to adapt their businesses as technology changes as well. But yeah, I do think, you know, if we talk about the chemistry and the physiological effects on the human body with repeated exposures, I mean, everything.
And it's not large exposures, just little bits over time. I think people are doing that, you know, generally as an industry, they're doing the right thing already.
They are.
And charcoal filters in cabs, all that sort of stuff. But they are still
30, 40, 50 years on a farm, and that accumulation is the problem. And even if there's still exposure there, it goes back to that risk. The risk is, if we're still exposed to a chemical, guess what? We can actually mitigate that with less exposure to the chemical because we're not in the chemical zone. We're not. And I think too, even with autonomy and the introduction of systems that enhance that delivery of the autonomy, of the autonomous machine by, you know, autonomous loading and refilling. Again, we're removing ourselves from the contact and the open containers, the lifting up of different container sizes and the stress that puts on your body and the exposure to the chemical as well. They're all going to be massively reduced.
I think, you know, you see any of Safe Work was the one, they said, we're removing the human out of the operation. That's what they were excited about. A lot of people are away from
that interaction.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we bring that up now because we've had the conversation with Safe Work, and we know that, again, in terms of stakeholders and partners, they're some of the people that we're engaged with to ensure that that farm readiness is something that includes that regulation and that compliance and that quality assurance and evidence-based opportunities where they can show compliance. They were very open to the fact that they were late to the party on this, that they were really wanting some high-level understanding to just get them going, to be able to support agriculture as an industry, but also growers that are actually, like we see, going around, like, we've got Mo already going. And what I found refreshing was that they were listening. And I think what our responsibility, and again, this goes with that legacy piece and the legacy that we've talked about, is that we want to be able to advise, instruct, even keep it sensible.
Yeah.
Keep it sensible. We need to be able to still operate, still be able to get the job done. Why? And I talk about the elephant trail, because if you say that this is how you're supposed to do it, humans and animals are beautiful at creating an elephant trail. You see it all the time in parks. You've got the concrete path, and everyone's supposed to be instructed to walk up there. But if there is a better way or a better way of getting around and doing that, you see the dirt track and it will sort itself out. Same will happen. And it has already anyway. So I'm mindful that we need to be aware of the elephant track and make that as safe as possible too, and actually acknowledge that that is a reality of how business is done in ag, as well as others.
Focus is to improve our growers' productivity.
Yeah,
exactly.
The last thing we want to do is bring the noise and complication
absolutely.
to an operation that already has a lot going on.
Exactly.
We're here to make it easier. And more productive at the same time.
Yeah. And that's
do less, achieve more.
That's right.
Less interaction.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a part of that stakeholder engagement is actually being that voice of like, no, that's actually not going to wear in this industry. We need to keep this sensible. Let's advocate for that. And I think we have already, which is really nice to do. So I just want to talk quickly about the convention that's coming up with Lawn Solutions Australia in May. We're obviously going to be there. We're excited to be there. We're going to have our Kubota down there showcasing a Sabanto kit on that. We were talking the day before the convention actually starts. We're doing some field opportunities and also talking about farm readiness. We as a collective, and I think we've made this decision in a united front, that we want to be there to talk about all the noise. So the good, the bad, the ugly, and let's get it all out there and have the conversation. So farm readiness being one of those things to actually introduce that opportunity. But I guess the convention the next day, we're there to celebrate turf. We're there to celebrate the wins of turf. What sort of things do you think are going to come up in the booth?
Well, there's going to be a lot of requests for things we can't deliver this year, I think.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Look, we'd love to see some new technologies and algorithms come through on certain product lines, and I'd love to say that we've got the support of our R&D departments in the manufacturing side of things that could really push that and propel that for us. I think the conversations really need to go higher. I'm interested to hear the ideas and what's requested of us, but I really think we need input from some of these chemistry companies and manufacturers to really get together and help us R&D at a greater level than we can ever achieve. They're the guys coming up with it. So if we can get enough stakeholder involvement, it's a no-brainer.
Oh,
we're excited to learn. Like, we're going to be there learning as well. As you said, there's going to be sort of requests for different things, I suppose, but just understanding what they are actually requiring and what is their biggest pain point. And
well, I think the pain points are what are going to come up. That's what they talk about when they're asking for things. When you hear it over and over again, they might not be asking. They might not be able to articulate what the solution is. Maybe we don't know what that is yet. But that pain point that's reoccurring, usually if we're able to identify that, it's going to bring to light what they're really after. It's really going to give them that next big gain.
If that tipping of the scales of that weight continues to be in that direction.
So Scott, can you tell us a bit about some work that PTX have done and some new products that are coming through this year that are going to play well with our autonomous solutions?
Yes, they've released a product called Symphony. Symphony nozzle. It's a PWM system. PWM spraying systems are not new to Australia. They have been around for a while, but The PWM, for people that sort of don't understand it, is pulse width modulation. The nozzle is actually pulsing, and it gives us opportunity to control the droplet size over a wide speed range. So when you're starting spraying at the start of a block, obviously normal systems will be lower pressure, so the droplet size will be bigger. As you move into your top speed in the block, the pressure increases, which then changes the droplet size. With the PWM system, it'll manage that right through those speed ranges. So just getting a better, more uniform droplet right across the field. The other thing is obviously turn compensation too. So in broadacre, turning around trees, and it'll be same in turf and the like. Turning around trees, it'll actually adapt the boom. So the outside of the boom is going faster, the inside of the boom is going slower. So normal standard systems will over apply on the inside, but it'll under apply on the outside. So as it goes around trees, so
Which can cause
PWM
residual effects,
Correct.
and negative effects from residual and
under
overdose,
application especially. So and it is also individual nozzle control. So when you go over where you've sprayed, it'll actually shut each individual nozzle off. So it just won't shut the whole boom off or just sections. It'll actually be individual nozzles. So again, the residual effects and that are lessened by the fact that you're not going back over where you've sprayed.
And the economic gains of reduced chemical costs and input costs.
So, but it's it's exciting technology, and it's something that works really well, obviously, in the autonomy situation. And there's also other technologies coming along that'll marry into that quite well as it comes available.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see which implements we can attach here and go to work.
Yeah, we
Get
keep
it
talking
done.
about that end-to-end solution, don't we? And that's whether it's autonomy or not, it's an end-to-end solution.
And look, I think it's going to be critical to find the right partners, and I think we've really had some interesting conversations with people who are very good at devising some of those solutions that will add on to maybe where the manufacturers haven't quite adapted their solution quite yet. If we can come in and enhance and implement to work with autonomy as well, I think we're well on our way to achieving that with some of the new partnerships we've built.
So one of those partners is Lawn Solutions Australia, which we're excited about. And I know that in May, in their convention, we're really excited to meet their growers and take it from there. Gents, I think that's it. I think we're good now.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, guys.
No, thank you.
Great chat.